To catch a killer. Tina hitched up her skirt and smiled at the slowing Cadillac. The driver pulled to the trash-strewn curb and lowered the tinted passenger window. With her long legs, generous breasts, and red hair falling to her tiny waist, Tina looked more like a model than a prostitute. But just so there were no questions, her thigh-high boots, black miniskirt, and clearly visible pink panties told the driver he'd come to the right place. Still not used to prancing around in stilettos, Tina took her time and strolled to the Cadillac, aware the driver was watching every twitch of her hips. She pushed up her breasts and stuck her head through the window, hoped this was the guy she'd been searching for, but doubted she'd be so lucky. She didn't need to look at the artist. The artist climbed the final flight of stairs, opened the door, and then locked it behind her. Today would be a busy day, just like every other one, and she couldn't be bothered while she was at work. She climbed onto the swivel stool in the middle of the tiny room and turned toward the north-facing window with the easel directly beneath it. After placing a blank canvas on the easel, she looked out the window, admiring the beautiful nothingness before her. With remarkable speed, she painted the T intersection where Main Street ran into West Oak Avenue. A few moments later, a row of beautiful trees lined the east side of the road. Their shade spread across the blacktop. The artist sat up and looked out the window, pleased. The deserted streets miles below her were exactly as she had rendered them on the canvas. Afraid she'd lose her inspiration. Surviving the holidays. At 12 years old, Paul began to suspect he was jaded. He wasn't entirely certain that he knew what it meant, but that's the word that popped into his head, and it felt right. What other explanation could there be for a kid hating Christmas? Paul just couldn't wait for this day to be over, the squeals of his brothers and sisters rummaging through presents, only making it worse. He didn't want to be this way. In fact, he envied his younger siblings. He wished he could feel their joy, but in the Harrison household, when you reached a certain age, Christmas lost its innocence. Presents no longer mattered. That time had come for Paul and his older brother Ron, who was slumped next to him on the couch. They had both seen too much and remembered too well. Jonathan and Francis' last embrace. It's good to see your whole family made it. Amazing that they still love and support you despite the things you've done. I wonder if they know how much their presence here means. They came to offer prayers. They came to offer you strength, but all they really do is make your despair darker, your suffering sweeter. To die in your loved one's arms is one thing. To die helplessly in front of them is quite another. I suppose it's a blessing, though, to finally see all this coming to an end. Look at their faces. Look at what you've done. Look at what you've reduced them to. This has to be the worst moment of your mother's life, and you're responsible. The lines of fear and revulsion etched into her face will never go away. Your split decision. Waking every morning with regret and resentment was taking its toll on Brian. Turning and seeing that lumpy, out-of-shape body and hearing the incessant snoring was just that much worse due to lack of sleep. Brian was tired and unhappy with his lifelong commitment. If this was one of his novels, he'd simply erase Joseph and create someone more appealing, or better yet, allow himself the pleasure of being alone for a while. He'd never been alone, and the thought made him angry. But it was too early to be angry. Definitely not the way to start the weekend. They were supposed to be installing new shelves in the living room. Brian had been putting it off for months, maybe longer. He couldn't remember. Everything had become